Hey there, guys. Welcome to the Holy Shed. Thank you so much for joining me today. I missed you last week, of course, but I can tell you that me and my Mrs. Pat had an utterly ace time at Greenbelt. It's always good to get back to your own bed, of course, but yeah, just meeting so many people, many of whom we only get together with once a year at that event, is always so wonderful, especially in the Jesus Arms, the beer tent. One of my highlights at Greenbelt this year was this person, Flamey Grant. Now, as you can see, Flamey Grant is a drag queen singer who grew up in the Bible Belt of North Carolina in the States. She was amazing and lovely. Her beautiful, deeply honest songs told her story of growing up as a closeted queer kid in a world of fundamentalism. I doubt she ever looked like this, mind you. That would have really freaked him out. But seeing Flamey made me marvel once again at how Greenbelt has changed over the years. From an event that began in the early 1970s with an American evangelist preaching from the main stage to now an American drag queen in all her colourful glory occupying that very same space. I think that would have freaked him out too. But somewhere back in the midst of time, a Greenbelt board member asked me to check out and give an assessment of a speaker at the festival who was apparently issuing dodgy ideas about same-sex relationships being an okay thing. I mean, could be me giving that talk nowadays, but even back then, when I hadn't really properly sorted out my own thoughts, I reported that I liked and agreed with what I heard being said. But as a trustee myself now, I can only say that I am delighted to be part of an event which is so open and welcoming to all kinds of people, kind of what the church should be like, but often isn't. And someone once told me that Greenbelt was, in fact, now their church, which they attend once a year. And the story is not uncommon. Many people feel that the festival provides them with a spiritual home, somewhere to belong, to feel that they fit in a way that they haven't found in a church. Greenbelt has certainly been important to me over the years since I first attended in 1978. I only visited that year, but I knew then that this was somewhere that I wanted to be, that I wanted to be a part of. And very significantly, I recall a late night conversation with a bunch of friends outside our tent in August 1993, it would have been. And somewhere around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, could have been later for all I know, I heard the words, "We post evangelicals," come out of my mouth. It was like a bolt out of the blue. I'd never thought of that phrase before, and yet somehow everybody knew what it meant when I said it. And a year later, I wrote my first book entitled The Post Evangelical, and it was published and launched in 1995 at the Greenbelt Festival. The bookshop manager told me that it was the fastest selling book he'd ever had at the festival, which I don't think was because of my great writing, but I think it was because somehow the book, the phrase, hit the nail right on the head for a lot of people. So 2025 will be the Post Evangelicals' 30th anniversary. I really can't believe that. And I hope to mark that in some way, especially since, amazingly, the book is still in print now in SPCK's Classics range. I'm a classic. I just have to face it. The poet David White has a line in one of his poems that says, "There is no house like the house of belonging." There is no house like the house of belonging. We all need somewhere, don't we? We all need somewhere to belong. Hopefully, we have a biological family where we belong, though that's not a given. But, beyond the biological, I reckon we all need, a tribe, a posse to which we belong, a community of kindred spirits. It may be, and hopefully is, an in the flesh community, but these days it may be an online community like the Holy Shed, where many people I know tell me that they feel they've found a home, even though it's not a physical one. Belonging, that lovely word, belonging, is a current felt need in the world, I believe. There's a lot of alienation about, and identity is a bit of a buzzword. Almost all the key areas of struggle and conflict in our society and in the wider world have identity somewhere right there at the core. And nowadays we speak of this as identity politics. That term first appeared, to my knowledge anyway, with the civil rights movement in the United States, where it described the African American struggle for justice after centuries of living under an oppressive white culture. Black people banded together, organised marches and demonstrations to campaign against racial discrimination. Identity politics within the African American community from that time forwards changed the world, at least to some degree. Though, of course, the struggle continues, needs to continue to this day through things like Black Lives Matter. But now, identity politics has diversified in a multitude of different directions. The LGBTQ plus movement is a prime example of a whole section of society that has been ostracized and discriminated against from time immemorial, leading many gay people painfully to hide their identity for fear, at one time of being imprisoned, but certainly of being ostracized, of being excluded, of being, looked down on, often within the church community. But then pride came, hallelujah. A very public, colourful declaration of LGBT identity that gave many, many folk confidence to come out and know that they belonged, that they weren't, weirdos outside, but there was a place for them, a community of which they were a part. Well, this is identity politics in action. It's also finding expression among people, for example, with disabilities. Or in the refugee team in the Olympics. Don't you think that's a wonderful thing? It's sad that they have to be there as a refugee team, but so good that they can come out and proudly present themselves and take part and achieve things in something like the Olympics. But any minority which has been ignored or discriminated against is influenced by identity politics, a refusal to be discounted and overlooked. It's about the creation of communities of refuge, places of empowerment. All of this is great in my view. The problem is that as many minority groups struggle to assert their identity, some people within wider society feel their own identity under threat from these minority causes, often seeing them and describing them as political correctness gone mad, or as a means of, in some way, robbing them of some of their identity. And so we have the rise of populist politics, mostly with a right-wing agenda or an inclination in that direction, which feel compelled to defend their home or their homeland or their identity against what they see as these, vocal minorities trying to undermine what they feel is their home in mainstream society. The battle lines are drawn, of course, in the United States, in South America, and across Europe and here in Britain. Communities that feel neglected by governments of every stripe or feel their identity is under threat seem to fit into this category. And issues like the refugee crisis are huge trigger points for this, as we witnessed very clearly in the riots and the counter riots just a few weeks ago across the country, all of which, unsettles us, doesn't it? Makes us feel pretty insecure and frightened about how these kind of, tensions are going to play out or hopefully be resolved. And, I don't think locking people up in prison is a way to make the problem disappear. Maybe it's important for people who are behaving in brutish and horrible ways to have to face the consequences. But that isn't going to make this problem disappear, because however mistaken people may be, some of them feel threatened by what they see as progressive trends in society. And neither jail sentences nor social media slagging matches or cancel culture, none of these things are really going to help move things forward. It just seems to more and more create these trenches that people get dug into. And it's pretty scary when you see this happening. Identity politics, I think, is indeed a champion to causes against oppression and injustice, but they can also lead to reactions of intolerance, alienation, and even violence. To broaden the issue, people often ask me why fundamentalist religion appears to be in the up and up, why it's those kind of churches that seem to be growing and flourishing today, why churches with a conservative socio-theological outlook appear to be the ones that attract people, or why certain young Muslims are attracted to extremism. Well, the thing is, it's about identity. Fundamentalism, for which read a longing or craving for certainty, for familiarity, and for a settled identity. Fundamentalism offers an illusion of security in an uncertain or threatening world. But I think it is an illusion. Black and white religion, like extremist politics, offers an apparent house of belonging. But it's only a house for those who fit into that particular club. The doors are pretty tightly closed to anybody else. Identity religion goes hand in hand with identity politics. They're flip sides of the same thing. It's the same tune with different lyrics. The underlying yearning, I think, is to belong, to feel safe, to be at home, and to feel that, your identity is a place of security. And we Greenbelters, or we progressives, I think are part of this too. I mean, we look for a house of belonging based on our more liberal values. The Holy Shed can be a house of belonging. I hope it is. But look, identity politics or identity theologies are in themselves neither good nor bad, but expressions of a basic human need to belong, to be secure. They can be good or bad, depending on the issues at stake and the attitudes that are expressed through them. They may lead to necessary social and political or religious reform, but they may equally lead to entrenched tribalisms, to exclusivism, to abuse of the other, and even in some cases violence. Either way, it's part of the new reality that we all now have to deal with in the world. When government policies or social trends or religious progressiveness causes certain sections of society or of the church to feel that their faith or their way of life or their economic well-being is under siege, their sense of identity is undermined, and fear and anger and maybe bullying or even violence are the result. But what so often gets lost in the culture wars, as they're called, or the theology wars or identity politics, is the sense, I think, of a deeper underlying unity that we all share. When I see reports, as I've been just seeing this week, about the frightening increase of melting glaciers, or hear that the UK is one of the Earth's most nature-depleted countries. How about that? One of the most nature-depleted countries in Europe, or that increasing numbers of displaced people and refugees are fleeing the devastating effects of climate change already impacting their lives and their communities. Well, then, as I see all these things happening, this reminds me that we're all earthlings. Before anything else, before any other label we wear or tag that we hang on to, we are earthlings. We're all a single species on a beautiful but vulnerable planet. It reminds me that we share a common identity as well as having these more narrow and in many cases, necessary identities. So look, let me fasten my colours firmly to the mast yet again. I am woke through and through and proud of that. I stand for the human rights of people of colour, of women still marginalised and oppressed in many ways. I stand in solidarity with LGBTQ plus people, including trans folk who are in some ways the sort of Cinderella of the LGBT community. I stand in solidarity with people with disabilities whose rights are often overlooked, or refugees and asylum seekers just looking for a safe home. But as well as all of that, I also recognise that the rights of one group can feel threatening and undermining to the rights of others. And we desperately need to listen, to talk, to be open, to hear the concerns of others without in any way backing down from our own commitments and priorities. It's not one or the other. Identity politics at its best is a way of providing safe spaces where people who have been overlooked or ostracized can be safe and flourish. But somehow, in the midst of all of this, we humans, I don't know, we've never properly discovered, I think, the art of living together with difference. And look, I find this as challenging as anyone else, but it's something that, we desperately need to learn about. And the truth is, I just can't let go of Martin Luther King's vision of a world house that he spoke of, where people of different creeds, cultures, ethnicities, and sexual differences, whatever, can live together in peace and safety. Not necessarily all agreeing, definitely not all, the same. And this house of belonging isn't one where we ignore or deny the differences, but in some way transcend them and ultimately, I would hope, find ways to celebrate those differences. I believe Martin Luther King's World House is a tangible vision of what Jesus called the kingdom of God, a universal culture of justice and peace, inspired and energized by God's Spirit in the world, a companionship of empowerment. As I shared last time, I loved the Liverpool imam crossing the road to talk with the Islamophobic protesters that were outside of his mosque, and he concluded that, we have to learn to talk, and or else there is no way forward. We just perpetuate this sort of enmity. As I said, it takes a Scouse imam to walk into an aggressive crowd and ask, "What is it again that you're protesting against?" I love that. I love it. It's a conversation opener. It's an outstretched hand instead of a shaking fist. So, look, none of us can solve these problems on our own. None of us can create this world house at the mega level. But we do have choices about these things in our personal lives. We're all faced with the challenge to love our enemies in down-to-earth, everyday situations. Every day, in some way or other, we are choosing, by our actions and by our words, by our attitudes, the kind of world that we wish to live in. There's no escaping that. We're doing it all the time in the way we interact with people, the way we react to what we see on the TV or whatever. We are all choosing the kind of world that we wish to live in. And it's not easy, but it's hopeful and crucially important to do that. We all can help to build the world house in some little corner of our life. I can't see a way forward in our world that doesn't take seriously the requirement of the prophet Micah to live justly, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with God. I just think that verse, if that was all we had of a Bible, it would be enough. Live justly, love kindness, and walk humbly with God, which is really an equivalent of what Jesus said when he talked about treating others the way that we ourselves wish to be treated. Personally, I'm not in any shape or form going to renege on my so called wokeness. I want a society. I long for a society. I want to work with every scrap of strength in my body toward a society where outsiders are welcomed, where people with different backgrounds, experiences, and gender or sexual identities are treated as equal, where governments stop slaughtering innocent people or oppressing them for their stupid ideological ends, where we learn to live differently for the sake of our planet and its creatures. That's the kind of world that I believe in and that I want to put every single bit of my strength into trying to create, even if it's only in some little way in my little part of this great world house. But I believe in a world also where we can all sit around tables and listen to the concerns of others and find ways to live together in justice and peace. The fact that that lovely imam went across, took those, potentially dangerous steps across the road into that crowd and began to ask what their concerns were, to try to understand what it was that made them come and shout and holler and be aggressive toward, their Muslim brothers and sisters. I think that that is just such an amazing thing, to be prepared to talk to people and listen to people. Not agree with them necessarily, and there's room for plenty of arguments here. But I believe in that world. I believe we all need to think about these things and be sure that our own search for identity, us muscling everybody out and creating our space, is not at the cost of the identity and space of other people. A house of belonging is a place where we feel safe and secure. And I pray, dear friends, that each of you will know that place for yourself where you can flourish and be empowered to be all that you can be. Because that, I think, is what it means to be Christian. I think it's what it means to be human. That we need a place, a world where we can all flourish, which happens to be the title of a prayer that I wrote and included in my book of prayers. And here it is. So let's just take a moment to look at these words and to own them for ourselves. May I never become indifferent toward a world where people are trapped in debt or overwhelmed by hunger, poverty, or despair. May I never be silently complicit in a world where people are judged by background, economic status, or by the colour of their skin, or by gender, sexuality, or disability. May I never sit by while Mother Nature is depleted and diminished, while the earth suffers climate disruption, or while precious creatures and species are abused or driven to extinction. God grant me holy anger at injustice and the fervent will to work tirelessly for a kinder, fairer world where all can thrive and flourish. Amen. So, here's something I'd like to show you. This is what me and Pat did yesterday. We went to St Anne's Church in Soho to celebrate the love and friendship of these two gorgeous men, Rog and Mike. Rog, who's the one here in the t-shirt, the cuddly one, Rog was a member of Holy Joe's, where we used to meet in a pub at Clapham Common back in the early 1990s. And Rog came from South Africa, where he was in a church, and he and some friends felt that they wanted to come out and say who they were as gay people, and they ended up being booted out the church. And he came to London feeling that He didn't really want anything to do with church or God or anything like that. And he met another member of Holy Joe's on the tube train, and they had a conversation. And through that, he came along and became part of our life. And just look at him. Am I getting that right? This lovely man, these beautiful guys. So if you've got a drink handy right now, I'd like you to grab hold of it and to raise a glass or a mug or whatever it is you've got in a toast to Rog and Mike. A toast to people who are helping to create a house of belonging in the world. A toast to us finding our house of belonging. Dear friends, to life, L'chaim. So there we are. Thank you very much for being with me today. I'm going to tell you something else important in a moment, but if you like what I'm doing here in the Holy Shed, you can support us. You can buy us a coffee. You just need to follow the link which is on your screen now, and we are deeply, deeply grateful for everyone who buys us coffees and sends us messages of encouragement and gives us a hug when we meet up, because we all need that, don't we? And a place where we could meet up, actually, is going to take place on the 12th, Thursday, the 12th of September, a couple of weeks' time, where I'm hosting a book party. So this is a time to celebrate the prayer book, OMG, but also this autumn I'm going to be launching out on quite a number of dates of a book tour, going around talking about the book and signing books and so on and so forth. I'll give you a list of those at some point. But if you're in or around London, or you can get there on Thursday, the 12th of September, we're in the brand new premises of the Art Academy. And the principal of that academy, Rob Pepper, is one of our very dearest friends, and we're going to be the guinea pigs in this new space, this gallery space they've got there, to have a party at which all kinds of lovely things are going to happen. There's going to be live music and comedy and a bit of serious stuff too, me talking to my friend Martin Rowe about prayer. So if you can come, I'd love you to come. It'd be great so we know about numbers. If you can let me know, you could direct message me, or put in a comment, or you can email me, or you can just turn up. It's just helpful to have some idea of how many people will be there. But every one of you are welcome. It'd be great to have you. And that's just about it for this week. Me and Pat are off tomorrow to Scargill House, which is a wonderful retreat centre in Yorkshire, where I'm going to be leading a retreat this week, and then straight from there we go to Amadown in Somerset for another retreat. So, this is called retirement, guys. I love it to bits. So that's just about it. I'm going to leave you in a moment with a candle and some music, because I've been asked by one of our friends, Angie, if we could light a candle for Heidi, who is 94 years of age, I think, and is not very well and probably hasn't got too long in this world. And so the candle is just by way of a prayer that to send her on her journey. But you may have other people that you're concerned about, not necessarily who are dying, but people who are going through some difficult time of whatever nature. Or maybe it's for yourself. So I'd like you to do that in just a moment. So that's just it, guys. Thank you very much for being with me. I'll be back next week. I might record it from either Yorkshire or Somerset. I don't know, during my busy week. But that's it. Go well. Be kind to the world around you. Just throw some kindness out into the world, to strangers, to friends, and to yourself. And stay human. I'll see you soon. So here is to Heidi and whoever else.